The evolution of the horse, a mammal of the family Equidae, occurred over a geologic time scale of 50 million years, transforming the small, dog-sized, forest-dwelling Plyo Hippest into the modern horse. Paleozoologists have been able to piece together a more complete outline of the evolutionary lineage of the modern horse than of any other animal. The horse belongs to the order Perissodactyla, the members of which all share hooved feet and an odd number of toes on each foot, as well as mobile upper lips and a similar tooth structure. This means that horses share a common ancestry with tapirs and rhinoceroses. The perissodactyls arose in the late Paleocene, less than 10 million years after the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. This group of animals appears to have been originally specialized for life in tropical forests, but whereas tapirs and, to some extent, rhinoceroses retained their jungle specializations, modern horses are adapted to life on drier land, in the much harsher climatic conditions of the steppes. Other species of equus are adapted to a variety of intermediate conditions. The early ancestors of the modern horse walked on several spread-out toes, an accommodation to life spent walking on the soft, moist grounds of primeval forests. As grass species began to appear and flourish, the equids' diets shifted from foliage to grasses, leading to larger and more durable teeth. At the same time, as the steppes began to appear, the horse's predecessors needed to be capable of greater speeds to outrun predators. This was attained through the lengthening of limbs and the lifting of some toes from the ground in such a way that the weight of the body was gradually placed on one of the longest toes. The third. History of research. Wild horses were known since prehistory from Central Asia to Europe, with domestic horses and other equids being distributed more widely in the Old World. But no horses or equids of any type were found in the New World when European explorers reached the Americas. When the Spanish colonists brought domestic horses from Europe, beginning in 1493, escaped horses quickly established large wild herds. In the 1760s, the early naturalist Buffon suggested this was an indication of inferiority of the New World fauna, but later reconsidered this idea. William Clark's 1807 expedition to Big Bone Lick found leg and foot bones of the horses, which were included with other fossils sent to Thomas Jefferson and evaluated by the anatomist Caspar Wister, but neither commented on the significance of this find. The first Old World equid fossil was found in the gypsum quarries in Montmartre, Paris, in the 1820s. His sketch of the entire animal matched later skeletons found at the site. During the Beagle Survey expedition, the young naturalist Charles Darwin had remarkable success with fossil hunting in Patagonia. On 10 October 1833, at Santa Fe, Argentina, he was filled with astonishment when he found a horse's tooth in the same stratum as fossil giant armadillos, and wondered if it might have been washed down from a later layer, but concluded this was not very probable. After the expedition returned in 1836, the anatomist Richard Owen confirmed the tooth was from an extinct species, which he subsequently named Equus curvidens, and remarked, "This evidence of the former existence of a genus which, as regards South America, had become extinct, and has a second time been introduced into that continent, is not one of the least interesting fruits of Mr. Darwin's paleontological discoveries." In 1848, a study on the fossil horses of America by Joseph Leedy systematically examined Pleistocene horse fossils from various collections, including that of the Academy of Natural Sciences, and concluded at least two ancient horse species had existed in North America, Equus curvidens and another, which he named Equus americanus. A decade later, however, he found the latter name had already been taken and renamed it Equus complicatus. In the same year, he visited Europe and was introduced by Owen to Darwin. The original sequence of species believed to have evolved into the horse was based on fossils discovered in North America in the 1870s by paleontologist Charles Marsh. The sequence, from Plyo Hippest to the modern horse, was popularized by Thomas Huxley and became one of the most widely known examples of a clear evolutionary progression. The horse's evolutionary lineage became a common feature of biology textbooks, and the sequence of transitional fossils was assembled by the American Museum of Natural History into an exhibit that emphasized the gradual, straight-line evolution of the horse. Since then, as the number of equid fossils has increased, the actual evolutionary progression from Plyo Hippest to Equus has been discovered to be much more complex and multi-branched than was initially supposed. The straight, direct progression from the former to the latter has been replaced by a more elaborate model with numerous branches in different directions, of which the modern horse is only one of many. George Gaylord Simpson in 1951 first recognized that the modern horse was not the goal of the entire lineage of equids, but is simply the only genus of the many horse lineages to survive. Detailed fossil information on the distribution and rate of change of new equid species has also revealed that the progression between species was not as smooth and consistent as was once believed. Although some transitions, such as that of Plyo Hippest to Equus, were indeed gradual progressions, a number of others, such as that of Epihippus to Mesohippus, were relatively abrupt in geologic time, taking place over only a few million years. Both anagenesis and cladogenesis occurred, and many species coexisted with ancestor species at various times. The change in equid's traits was also not always a straight line from Plyo Hippest to Equus. Some traits reverse themselves at various points in the evolution of new equid species, such as size and the presence of facial fossae, and only in retrospect can certain evolutionary trends be recognized. Before odd-toed ungulates, Phenacodontidae. Phenacodontidae is the earliest family in the order Condylarthra, which is believed to be the ancestor to all odd-toed ungulates. It contains the genera Almogava, Capetian, Ectotian, Eodesmitodon, Meniscotherium, Ordothespidotherium, Phenacodus, and Pleurospidotherium. The family lived from the early Paleocene to the Middle Eocene in Europe and were about the size of a sheep, with tails making slightly less than half of the length of their bodies and, unlike their ancestors, good running skills for eluding predators. Eocene and Oligocene. Early equids. Eohippus appeared in the Ypresian, about 52 Maya. It was an animal approximately the size of a fox, with a relatively short head and neck and a springy, arched back. It had 44 low crown teeth, in the typical arrangement of an omnivorous, browsing mammal. 3 incisors, 1 canine, 4 premolars, and 3 molars on each side of the jaw. Its molars were uneven, dull, and bumpy, and used primarily for grinding foliage. The cusps of the molars were slightly connected in low crests. Eohippus browsed on soft foliage and fruit, probably scampering between thickets in the mode of a modern muntjac. It had a small brain, and possessed especially small frontal lobes. Its limbs were long relative to its body, already showing the beginnings of adaptations for running. However, all of the major leg bones were unfused, leaving the legs flexible and rotatable. Its wrist and hock joints were low to the ground. The forelimbs had developed 5 toes, of which 4 were equipped with small proto-hooves. The large 5th toe thumb was off the ground. The hind limbs had small hooves on 3 out of the 5 toes, while the vestigial 1st and 5th toes did not touch the ground. Its feet were padded, much like a dog's, but with the small hooves in place of claws. For a span of about 20 million years, Eohippus thrived with few significant evolutionary changes. The most significant change was in the teeth, which began to adapt to its changing diet. As these early equidae shifted from a mixed diet of fruits and foliage to one focused increasingly on browsing foods. During the Eocene, an Eohippus species branched out into various new types of equidae. Thousands of complete, fossilized skeletons of these animals have been found in the Eocene layers of North American strata, mainly in the Wind River Basin in Wyoming. Similar fossils have also been discovered in Europe, such as Propaliotherium orohippus approximately 50 million years ago, in the early to middle Eocene. Hippest smoothly transitioned into Orohippus through a gradual series of changes. Although its name means mountain horse, Orohippus was not a true horse and did not live in the mountains. It resembled Hippest in size, but had a slimmer body, an elongated head, slimmer forelimbs, and longer hind legs, all of which are characteristics of a good jumper. Although Orohippus was still pad-footed, the vestigial outer toes of Hippest were not present in the Orohippus. There were 4 toes on each foreleg, and 3 on each hind leg. The most dramatic change between Hippest and Orohippus was in the teeth. The first of the premolar teeth were dwarfed, the last premolar shifted in shape and function into a molar, and the crests on the teeth became more pronounced. Both of these factors gave the teeth of Orohippus greater grinding ability, suggesting Orohippus ate tougher plant material. Epihippus in the mid-Eocene, about 47 million years ago. Epihippus, a genus which continued the evolutionary trend of increasingly efficient grinding teeth, evolved from Orohippus. Epihippus had 5 grinding, low-crowned cheek teeth with well-formed crests. A late species of Epihippus, sometimes referred to as Hippus intermedius, had teeth similar to Oligocene equids, although slightly less developed. Whether Hippus was a subgenus of Epihippus or a distinct genus is disputed. Epihippus was only 2 feet tall. Mesohippus in the late Eocene and the early stages of the Oligocene epoch, the climate of North America became drier, and the earliest grasses began to evolve. The forests were yielding to flat lands, home to grasses and various kinds of brush. In a few areas, these plains were covered in sand, creating the type of environment resembling the present-day prairies. In response to the changing environment, the then-living species of equidae also began to change. In the late Eocene, they began developing tougher teeth and becoming slightly larger and leggier, allowing for faster running speeds in open areas, and thus for evading predators in non-wooded areas. About 40 Mesohippus suddenly developed in response to strong new selective pressures to adapt, beginning with the species Mesohippus sella and soon followed by Mesohippus westoni. In the early Oligocene, Mesohippus was one of the more widespread mammals in North America. It walked on 3 toes on each of its front and hind feet. The third toe was stronger than the outer ones, and thus more weighted. The fourth front toe was diminished to a vestigial nub. Judging by its longer and slimmer limbs, Mesohippus was an agile animal. Mesohippus was slightly larger than Epihippus, about 610 mm at the shoulder. Its back was less arched, and its face, snout, and neck were somewhat longer. It had significantly larger cerebral hemispheres, and had a small, shallow depression on its skull called a fossa, which in modern horses is quite detailed. The fossa serves as a useful marker for identifying an equine fossil species. Mesohippus had 6 grinding, cheek teeth, with a single premolar in front, a trait all descendant equidae would retain. Mesohippus also had the sharp tooth crests of Epihippus, improving its ability to grind down tough vegetation. Miohippus around 36 million years ago, soon after the development of Mesohippus, Miohippus emerged, the earliest species being Miohippus aciniboensis. As with Mesohippus, the appearance of Miohippus was relatively abrupt, though a few transitional fossils linking the 2 genera have been found. Mesohippus was once believed to have anagenetically evolved into Miohippus by a gradual series of progressions, but new evidence has shown its evolution was cladogenetic. A Miohippus population split off from the main Mesohippus genus, coexisted with Mesohippus for around 4 million years, and then over time came to replace Mesohippus. Miohippus was significantly larger than its predecessors, and its ankle joints had subtly changed. Its facial fossa was larger and deeper, and it also began to show a variable extra crest in its upper cheek teeth. a trait that became a characteristic feature of equine teeth. Plyo Hippest ushered in a major new period of diversification in equidae. It branched out into two major groups, one of which adjusted to the life in forests once again, while the other remained suited to life on the prairies. Miocene and Pliocene. True equines. Calabatopus. The forest-suited form was Calabatopus, whose second and fourth front toes were long, well-suited travel on the soft forest floors. Calabatopus probably gave rise to Anchitherium, which traveled to Asia via the Bering Strait land bridge, and from there to Europe. In both North America and Eurasia, larger-bodied genera evolved from Anchitherium. Cynohippus in Eurasia and Hypohippus and Megahippus in North America. Hypohippus became extinct by the late Miocene. Parahippus. The Miohippus population that remained on the steppes is believed to be ancestral to Parahippus, a North American animal about the size of a small pony, with a prolonged skull and a facial structure resembling the horses of today. Its third toe was stronger and larger, and carried the main weight of the body. Its four premolars resembled the molar teeth, and the first were small and almost non-existent. The incisor teeth of Parahippus, like those of its predecessors, had a crown as humans do. However, the top incisors had a trace of a shallow crease mark in the beginning of the core cup. Merychippus. In the middle of the Miocene epoch, the grazer Merychippus flourished. It had wider molars than its predecessors, which are believed to have been used for crunching the hard grasses of the steppes. The hind legs, which were relatively short, had side toes equipped with small hooves, but they probably only touched the ground when running. Merychippus radiated into at least 19 additional grassland species. Hipparian. Three lineages within equidae are believed to be descended from the numerous varieties of Merychippus: Hipparian, Protohippus, and Plyo Hippest. The most different from Merychippus was Hipparian, mainly in the structure of tooth enamel. In comparison with other equidae, the inside, or tongue side, had a completely isolated parapet. A complete and well-preserved skeleton of the North American Hipparian shows an animal the size of a small pony. They were very slim, rather like antelopes, and were adapted to life on dry prairies. On its slim legs, Hipparian had 3 toes equipped with small hooves, but the side toes did not touch the ground. In North America, Hipparian and its relatives proliferated into many kinds of equids, at least one of which managed to migrate to Asia and Europe during the Miocene epoch. Plyo Hippest. Plyo Hippest arose from Calippus in the Middle Miocene, around 12 Maya. The long and slim limbs of Plyo Hippest reveal a quick-footed steppe animal. Until recently, Plyo Hippest was believed to be the ancestor of present-day horses because of its many anatomical similarities. However, though Plyo Hippest was clearly a close relative of Equus, its skull had deep facial fossae, whereas Equus had no fossae at all. Additionally, its teeth were strongly curved, unlike the very straight teeth of modern horses. Consequently, it is unlikely to be the ancestor of the modern horse. Instead, it is a likely candidate for the ancestor of Astrohippus. Dinohippus. Dinohippus was the most common species of equidae in North America during the late Pliocene. It was originally thought to be monodactyl, but a 1981 fossil find in Nebraska shows some were tridactyl. Placippus. Placippus is often considered an intermediate stage between Dinohippus and the extant genus Equus. The famous fossils found near Hagerman, Idaho were originally thought to be a part of the genus Placippus. Hagerman fossil beds is a Pliocene site, dating to about 3.5 Maya. The fossilized remains were originally called Placippus shoshonensis, but further study by paleontologists determined the fossils represented the oldest remains of the genus Equus. Their estimated average weight was 425 kilograms, roughly the size of an Arabian horse. At the end of the Pliocene, the climate in North America began to cool significantly and most of the animals were forced to move south. One population of Plyo moved across the Bering Land Bridge into Eurasia around 2.5 Maya.